So what's your name
Thomas Adkins.
and what do you do for a profession?
I'm a graphic designer along with a fine art painter.
Where did you go to college?
I graduated with a degree from Pear College of Art in New Haven with a graphic and illustration major as a four-year degree. And then after that, I took some evening courses, graduate courses at the School of Visual Arts in New York City.
What made you decide to go into graphic design and art?
Well, I guess ever since I was probably 6 or 7, I had a real interest in drawing. And in second grade, I entered a competition to do a portrait of your father, which I won first place. And I won an award, something like a keychain or a birdhouse. So all through grammar school, I was designing and drawing the bulletin boards in school. And then in high school, I majored in art for 4 years, and I won a scholarship. So it's always been a love of mine ever since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. So I didn't have to make a decision what I wanted to do. I knew exactly what I wanted to do from an early age.
In graphic design, the field is constantly changing. How do you keep up to date with it all?
Oh, well, when I started out, we didn't have computers. So everything was done with, drawing and paper and magic markers, and what we called paste up and mechanical was gluing all the type. And then when the computers came on board in the 1990s, it was a slow process because there really wasn't anyone teaching that at that early stages around 1989, 1990. So we bought computers and it was kind of self-taught. And then as time went on, we upgraded our software, and as the software was upgraded, we were able to, kind of do our own tutorials. And then we took a few, workshop courses later on. But it's just something that you have to keep on top of as far as on the computer side of it, by just upgrading your software and learning it and doing tutorials. There's so many tutorials online right now. You don't have to go to a brick and mortar school to take those courses. But a fundamental thing for me was, I didn't learn computers. I went to school to learn to draw and to design and to compose. So I learned all the basics, which is a real sound footing for, designing even on a computer. So they both went hand in hand.
How did you go about building your client base?
How did I go? Well, I didn't have to so much do that because I worked for agencies. So my first job out of college, I had an internship at an ad agency in Norwalk, and they had the client base. So I didn't have to, I was an assistant art director, so I had to do the design and the mechanicals and some of the production. But at that point, I didn't have to get my own clients. And then when I went to a larger agency, the same thing, they had the client base. So, and then later on in my career, when we opened up an ad agency, after about, I'd say 12 years in the business, I had partners who did the sales side. They did the banging on the doors and making the phone calls, and I was responsible for all the design and production. So I never had to really go out and find a client base. I always had those opportunities because I worked for agencies. When it comes to the client base for the fine art business, the art galleries, well, that's the same kind of thing. I'm showing in 4 or 5 galleries, and the galleries will they have their clientele, and that's who purchases the art. And occasionally, through my website, I'll get contacted by someone who has seen my work either in a one-man show or in some magazine advertising, and they'll contact me directly. So I never had to go out and really look for my own clients. And if I did, on the rare occasions that I did, I would just buy a database and do phone calls. but it had to be always supported with a website. Whether I'm selling the fine art or I'm selling the graphic design, people always want to verify who you are, what you do, your portfolio, all that through a website, which I have two websites. You know, I have a fine art website and I have a graphic design website.
What's it like working with the art galleries?
What's it like working with art galleries? I'll tell you, my experience has been it's not as professional as dealing with corporate clients. In the graphic design industry, I've always dealt with, you know, Fortune 500 companies, GE, IBM, large corporations, and they're much more professional, they're more business-like, they're more responsive, and they pay quicker. Now, with that being said, when it comes to art galleries, you can find some art galleries that are very professional, and they will promote you, but there are a lot of other ones out there. It's a very, very tough business, and they don't have large budgets, so not all of them can afford to promote you. Sometimes the payments that they pay you are not as quick as you would like them. It's a much tougher business, the fine art sales with the galleries than it is in the graphic design side of things. I typically will have a show every 2 years, and then in that point they will promote me, you know, with advertising and e-blasts and through Facebook. But typically I find in my experience that they're not quite as professional as the corporate world.
Do you find yourself restricted when working with corporations and Fortune 500 companies in what you can do?
Do I feel restricted? Yeah, well, there's far less freedom than when you're doing the fine arts. When you're doing the fine arts and you're selling to galleries, you can do whatever your interests are. But at the same time, you know, galleries, there are certain galleries who deal in realism, or they might deal with more landscape painting, or as opposed to abstraction. So you do have to find the right gallery that your work fits into. And for the most part, they'll take whatever you want to do. You're not directed by an art director or corporate communications, where a corporate communications person, they have a specific communication bit of information that they want to get out to the public. So they do direct you on maybe what the copy is, what they want to say, how conservative. It's usually very conservative and restricted, and you spend a lot of time making revisions and changes because it goes through committees. So there is a lot less freedom in the corporate world, and it's a little more directive than the fine art industry. But again, it typically pays better, and your salary is more reliable in the fine art industry, which can be all over the place. You can sell 2 or 3 paintings 1 month, and then you can have a dry spell for 2 or 3 months. So it's a totally different animal.
What do you prefer more, the graphic design world or the fine art world?
Well, that's a funny question. I prefer much more doing the fine arts. But when it comes to the business side of things, I prefer dealing with the corporate world, if that makes sense. I mean, no one makes changes to my paintings. No one tells me what to paint, how to paint it, when it's due, you know, unless I'm doing a commission. Where in the fine art world, I mean, in the graphic design world, you always have deadlines. You're always pushing size requirements and information requirements. There's all kinds of requirements that you have to fit into in regards to the corporate or the communication side of things, where again the fine art side of things is you have much more freedom, but less reliable when it comes to an income, unless you happen to be a superstar, which is probably 1/10 of 1%, and it might not last either.
And lastly, what would you recommend to a new artist or graphic designer coming out of college?
Well, the route, I guess I would recommend the way I went. The route I wanted to. I wanted to graduate college and be a fine artist and make all kinds of money and just live in my studio and go to gallery opening. That's what I wanted to do. But I realized early on that not only is that difficult, I mean, it's doable, but it requires a lot of income to do that. Your materials, your supplies, your promotion, your studio, all that stuff costs quite a bit of money. And unless you're willing to live in utter poverty the first, your first 4 or 5 years or whatever, you've got to get an income some way. And I thought in the graphic design, I'd much rather be doing graphic design than working in a coffee shop and then painting nights. And the graphic design industry has a lot in common with the fine arts industry as far as you're still working with color, you're working with compositions, you're still communicating an idea visually. So it's tied into the fine art industry. So you may not be painting, but you're still exercising and growing your skills. So you're able to, make a decent income, a good income in some cases, buy the materials that you want to do, that you need, and you can do the fine art on the side. And that's what I do. While I had the graphic design business, I always painted nights. Just made it a schedule, get in my studio at 7 at night, work till 10:30 every night, and then on weekends, early in the morning till 10 or 11. So I managed to get maybe 20 hours of my fine art in and 40 hours. So that's the route I chose because my love was the fine art. If your love is the graphic design, there's no need to do that. You just devote yourself 100% to the graphic design, get as much experience as you can. Maybe in the first few years, jump around a little bit to get different exposures. Whether you're doing social media or you're doing packaging, find out what area of graphic design you want to delve into. If that's accessible to you, if you're not willing to go into a big city, then you might not have all those opportunities. So you got to find out, what you want to do. You want to focus on the fine art. You want to focus on the graphic design. If it's the graphic design, you want to go into the city and work, and maybe work for an ad agency. And you could be doing more art direction. Do you want to get your hands wet and actually do the design itself as a designer? So I'd say for someone right out of school, try to find a job in the field. Try not to settle for, working at a coffee shop or Dunkin' Donuts or something while you're looking for your job. Try to find that graphic design position early on, regardless of what you're doing, and then just move up as you learn more. Just move up you move up into the next level. Does that make sense?
Thank you so much.
No problem. Good luck on this.
Thank you.